Pro jazz guitarists almost never played the big chords, and if you've been taught jazz guitar the traditional way, nobody told you that. So in this video, I'm gonna show you a system of lesser known chords so you can lay down the groove, come through the harmony of any song, and add chromatic motion that really drives the music forward. We all love the sound of rich jazz chords, but if you try to use them for comping, you already know the problem. They're difficult to play, they kill your rhythm, and figuring out whether you even have the right chord requires a degree in music theory. Like this, you'll never get your chords to groove, but there's a simpler way to do this, and it actually sounds better. Check this out. This flows, the chords are easy to play, and even though the chords are simpler, it's not boring. So let me show you how these actually work, and later how to add the rhythm and movement as well, so you sound like that. What you want to use is shell voicings, simple 3-note chords, root, 3rd, and 7th. So here's a C major 7 with the root on the 5th string. So you have the root, the 3rd, and the 7th. Now a shell voicing has the root on the lower string set and the 3rd and the 7th on the middle strings. Now this was the version with the root on the 5th string, but there's also one with the root on the 6th string. And again you of course have the chords on the middle string set. Here's how you get these chords into your ears and fingers fast so that you can use them on a real song immediately. Now the way shell voicings are built makes them naturally connect, so when you move through a song, the chords just flow instead of jumping around randomly. You're gonna hear that clearly when we put them to use on Autumn Leaves in a moment. Now since I'm using Autumn Leaves in this video, let's just look at the diatonic chords of B flat major. So diatonic really just means the chord built from each note in the scale. First, the voicings with the root on the 6th string. And here's the same thing with the root on the 6th string. I'm starting on F, the lowest note from the B flat major scale, on the E string, and the chord there is an F7. With these two exercises, it's easy to find the chords for Autumn Leaves. Let's focus on the first 8 bars. We do need 2 tweaks along the way, but I'm gonna show you as we get there. Here's the song and the diatonic chords. So first we need a C minor 7, then F7 is right here, and the B flat major 7 is right next to it. And can you see how these chords just sit right next to each other on the fretboard? That's what makes them flow so naturally through the song. Then we get E flat major 7, now here's an A half diminished, D7. Now I need the D7 because we're going to G minor 7, but that's really just taking the D minor 7 here and then changing the 3rd from major to minor, so like this to get D7. Now the G minor 6, well that's kind of the same story, so here's a G minor 7 and then I'm just changing the 7th to a 6. And that gives you this. That's all it takes. If you're not familiar with the chords, then play through them in time to get both the shapes and the song into your ears and fingers. Having that in your system will help you with the next part, adding rhythm. Most players struggle with rhythm because they think about it as an abstract thing that you count, not something that you hear. But rhythm is actually melody, and once you hear it that way, everything becomes easier. Keep in mind that not everybody in a band is playing notes, but we all play rhythm. Shell voicings have a built-in trick for this, a natural split between the bass note and the chord, which gives you 2 voices to play with, almost like a snare and a bass drum in a drum kit. Now for the first chord, the C minor 7, you split it and get 3 different sounds. Both, just the bass, or just the chord. Now let's add some rhythm. So here's a 1-bar pattern. First, just repeat it to get it into your ears. Can you hear how much more sense rhythm makes if you hear it as a melody? Now then, just to get it into your ears and also be a little bit more flexible, you can take it through the song. So here are the first 4 bars. Remember that you don't have to memorize all of these examples of the video. If you want to practice the chords and these rhythms, you can grab the free PDF and go through the exercises at your own pace. There's a link in the description. Now like this, you start building a vocabulary of rhythms, and once you have that, you can use them to create even more for your comping. Let me show you. The next challenge is making your rhythms connect. So most players end up just playing chords over the song. There's no phrase, no conversation. It doesn't go anywhere. But if rhythm is melody, then your comping needs to work like a melody as well. Phrases that ask a question and answer it. So here's how you develop that in 2 levels. Let's say that you have a simple rhythm that you already know. At first, you want to train your imagination and ability to hear rhythmic melodies. The easiest way to develop this is really just to play rubato first, so without worrying about strict time, so that you can focus purely on hearing what comes next. So start to play the 1-bar pattern like this. And now stop trying to imagine what might follow that naturally in the F7 bar. So that could be something like... Or maybe something more like this. You can move through the song like this, playing the first pattern every other bar and really get an idea about what works as a follow-up. Think of it as a question and an answer. That makes it easier. And this type of phrasing is also called call-response. Now the next level is to start working on this in time. So here the key is to start with simple rhythms, since you also have to keep track of the form and the chords. Now a good place to start could be this, which also gives you a bit of space to hear the next rhythm. You might as well start easy. So you want to try to play that rhythm every other bar and then come up with different answers in the bars in between. Check out how that sounds. Like this, it becomes easy to build a vocabulary of comping rhythms and connect them through a song, and still only using 3-note chords. Now, if you find this video useful and want to dig into some more jazz chord stuff, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I make new videos on this every week. Now, you might have noticed that I was doing a few more things in the example at the start of the video, and it might have seemed complicated, but it really isn't. Let me show you how that works. This is all without knowing tons of scales, theory, and substitutions, because it's almost purely visual. Now there are 2 levels to this: complete chords and single notes. I'm going to show you the chords first, and then we can use that to sort of add some single note tricks a little bit later. Let's start with the basic chords for the first few bars. Now add a bit of rhythm, because that sounded just way too much like an exercise. This already works, but let me show you how you can add a bit of extra chromatic energy without any theory. I'm going to break down how this works. Here are the first 2 bars. For this, passing chords are just chords that are leading into the next chord by moving up or down a fret. And as you can see, I don't even add a name to them in the sheet music, because they're just the same chord as the resolution. So we have this moving up to the F7, still just the same grip. And of course, that's really just using the matching shape, not trying to sort of think about that this is an E7. The same happens with the B flat major 7. So I have this moving down to the B flat major 7. No theory needed. Now you can add this to the next chords as well, but notice how you can also have them inside the bar. So here you first have the chord moving down to the E flat major 7. Well, actually, first you have a B flat major 7, and then we have this chord going down to E flat. And then I also have this one that is moving up to E flat within the bar. In general, you keep the main chord on beats 1 and 3 and then use passing chords to get to that one. That way the harmony is super clear and you also help the music really move along. Now what is great about this is that it doesn't really matter what the passing chord is, as long as it has a strong resolution. So you don't need to know 327 substitutions, you just need to know what chord it's going to. Now be careful with using a passing chord on beat 1. It's not impossible, but the soloist might not like it. There's a lot you can do with passing chords alone, but you can also add single note movement inside the chord. Let's look at that. The first thing you need is one extra shape, the major 6 chord. We usually just call them 6 chords. In this case, the B flat 6 and the E flat 6 are useful on autumn leaves. B flat major 6 here, so you can see how it's very close to B flat major 7. They also sound kind of similar. And then you have the E flat 6. And again, that's also very close to the E flat major 7. Now, major 7 and major 6 voicings are interchangeable. If you can use one, then the other one works as well. And that means that you can turn that movement into a chromatic connection between the two. So here I'm really moving the G up to the A. And on the E flat, I'm moving the D down to the C. You can also move from C minor 7 to F7 using one static note and then two that sort of slide into place. I really like that sound. Or go to B flat major 7 like this. The outer voices move down a fret while the middle voice moves up. And here I have this moving down, so I'm going from this chord, which is actually a B6, and then we have the outer voices moving down. And the middle voice, A flat or G sharp here, moving up to the A. So I love how these resolutions sound. All of these examples and tricks are in the free PDF, so you can start adding them to any song that you're already playing. Link in the description. And that's really the point of all this. You don't need complicated chords or a degree in music theory to sound like a pro. Simple voicings, musical rhythm, and a bit of movement is all it takes. Another place where simple solutions are more powerful is jazz soloing. If you want your solos to have the right feel and phrasing, so the two things that actually make it sound like jazz, famous artists like Joe Pass and Charlie Parker rely on triads. In this next video, I break down how you can use the same tricks to improve your solos, just using simple triads. Check it out, learn jazz, make music.